Hello and welcome. In this explainer, we're going to dive into a core principle of behavior that allows us to navigate the world with incredible precision. It's called stimulus discrimination. So let's start with a really simple question. Why do you answer a phone when it's ringing, but not when it's silent? It seems so obvious, almost automatic, right? Well, that everyday decision is actually a perfect example of a powerful learning process at work. And this process is key to understanding how we learn to respond appropriately to the countless signals in our environment. At its very core, stimulus discrimination is simply the ability to tell the difference between various signals, or stimuli, and then act accordingly. You can think of it as the opposite of generalization, where we might respond in the same way to similar things. Discrimination, on the other hand, is all about precision. It's about learning which specific cue signals a specific outcome. So how exactly do our brains get so good at this? Well, it isn't random. It's a very systematic process. Let's take a closer look at the mechanism that actually drives this type of learning. The crucial term to understand here is differential reinforcement. All this means is that a behavior gets reinforced, or you could say rewarded, under very specific conditions, but not under others. Our actions are literally shaped by these different outcomes as we learn to repeat the behaviors that get rewarded and, just as importantly, stop the ones that don't. Now, this process relies on two fundamental types of signals. First, we have the discriminative stimulus, or SD for short. The SD is like a green light. It's the signal that tells us reinforcement is available for a specific behavior. In contrast, you have the stimulus delta, or S delta. This is the red light. It signals that reinforcement is not available. Over time, we naturally learn to act only when that SD, that green light, is present. And this principle isn't just a theory in a textbook. It's something you can observe everywhere, from highly controlled lab experiments all the way to our own daily routines. So let's look at a few clear examples. Think about your day. The ring of your phone is an SD. It signals that answering will lead to a conversation. A green traffic light is an SD for pressing the accelerator. That familiar beep from the microwave is an SD for opening the door to get your food. In all of these cases, a very specific cue prompts a specific action because of a history of reinforcement. This whole concept is illustrated really clearly in controlled settings. For instance, a rat can be taught that pressing a lever only results in a food pellet when a little light is turned on. That light becomes the SD. When the light is off, that's the S delta, the rat quickly learns that pressing the lever won't be reinforced. The rat has successfully learned to discriminate between the two conditions. This process is also absolutely fundamental to how we learn language. A child gets praise for correctly labeling a tree as a tree. So the sight of the tree becomes the SD for saying that word. If they point to a car and say tree, they don't get that same reinforcement, so the car becomes an S delta for that word. The same exact thing goes for following instructions. We learn to respond precisely to the specific words we hear. Okay, so now that we have the basics down, let's explore a more complex form of this process. You see, discrimination isn't always about one single, simple signal. Very often, the context is just as important. This is what we call conditional discrimination. You can think of it as discrimination on hard mode. This is where a stimulus only acts as an SD under certain conditions. In other words, the context really matters. A signal's entire meaning can change depending on what other stimuli are present at the same time. A classic way to teach this is with a procedure called a matching to sample task. So imagine you're shown the written word car, that's your sample. Then you're given 3 pictures to compare it to. A car, a dog, and a boat. The word car makes the picture of the car the correct choice. It becomes the SD. But if the sample word was dog, then the picture of the dog would become the SD. The correct answer is conditional on that first sample stimulus. All right, we've gone from something as simple as ringing phones all the way to complex matching tasks. But why is this single principle so incredibly important? Let's zoom out for a moment and look at the big picture. Stimulus discrimination is really foundational to how we learn just about everything. It's how we form concepts, like telling the difference between a circle and a square. It's absolutely vital for social skills, like knowing when it's appropriate to raise your hand in class versus when to stay quiet. Ultimately, it allows us to navigate our world efficiently by responding to the right cues at the right time. So here's a final analogy to help this stick. Think of stimulus discrimination like having VIP access. You only perform the behavior, like trying to get into an exclusive club, when you have that VIP badge, the SD, because you know it's the only time you'll get access to the reinforcement. It's really just behavioral efficiency at its finest. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought.
How many of these little VIP badges are guiding your behavior every single day?